Welcome to the Takeoff Podcast, the go-to construction podcast for construction professionals seeking inspiration, education, or motivation for the next steps in their career. Each Monday, you'll be joined by me, Mick Donaghy, Managing Director of GEDON Executive Recruitment and a respected name from the industry. A construction leader, a business owner, or someone in the thick of the action. The whole premise of this podcast is for you to get something from it. An idea, a connection, a mentor, whatever it is. I hope you get it, and I hope you enjoy the show. Without further ado, let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Takeoff Podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Rachel Bermoy, the founder of Buteras, a groundbreaking platform addressing the critical skills gap in engineering and construction. With over a decade of industry experience, including working for major companies such as BHP and Asenco, Rachel recognized the need for accessible, high-quality, on-the-job training, leveraging intergenerational knowledge exchange to empower professionals. Buteros connects experienced subject matter experts with those seeking to enhance their technical competence and confidence, ultimately fostering a more proficient and less stressed workforce. From her early leadership roles through to her current mission, Rachel's passion for helping others within the greater infrastructure sector shines through. I'm super excited to have Rachel on the show. Rachel, do you mind giving us a little bit of an introduction to who you are, what you do? I never feel I can do it proper justice, so great to be joined by you today.
So I am a civil engineer by qualification, graduated in 2013, and in WA there was a bit of a downturn in the economy. So during that time, I actually did a bit of work for my university here in WA. We actually did a lot of engineering outreach. So it was kind of my casual job to tie me over until I got, an actual construction or, office job. So my background has been quite diverse. I've always had the engineering career, but I've always had the parallel fun learning and development type of thing. I've always loved tutoring and things like that. And my other passion is soccer. So I've always, football, for those people at football. And I've played that ever since I was 6 years old. A bit different now, being a bit older. But, so I think a combination of all these elements have definitely made up my perspective on the world, not to mention my Indian culture as well. My family migrated in 1990 to Australia. So I've grown up in that balance of East meets West. So you got the value system from your Indian parents plus I don't really know what Western culture is, but it's definitely different.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So I hope that gives you a good overview of, I guess, who I am. In terms of what I do, I'm now an entrepreneur, I guess, engineer turned entrepreneur. Do still miss engineering, but I guess I'm engineering a solution for other professionals in that I curate a panel of retired or semi-retiring industry professionals, so subject matter experts. It's a multidisciplinary panel. So this actually kind of achieves a couple of things. Firstly, it helps people exiting the industry transition into retirement. So if you think about it, these people are going from 40, 50, maybe 60-hour weeks to virtually nothing. And if they've not had a strategy in place, it could be quite overwhelming. Like, what do I do with all of this knowledge? And it could actually have some psychological stress impacts of like, oh my gosh, like what's this next chapter going to look like? Then you got people in industry who've got time, but not that level of knowledge. So this panel basically builds a network for current industry professionals to access as and when needed for basically on-the-job tutoring.
Excellent. Well, I was looking into, it's come to my attention, in the last few months. I mean, I think it's a really, really good idea, to be honest. We do a lot of work in the sort of pre-construction side of the workforce. So a lot of estimating, cost planning, but big part of the problem within that industry is that it's a dying industry. We've got a lot of guys, a lot of quality retiring. Just yesterday, I spoke to a 67-year-old and a 63-year-old, and these guys are looking at retiring the next few years. But, the skills, the knowledge that the industry will lose, by those two individuals retiring, it's really, really hard to sort of, I guess, recuperate and to make sure that we're covering that. But this is a great option. But we're keen to talk about that a little bit further into the show. I mean, can you tell me a little bit more about your upbringing, Rachel? Where effectively, where you grew up, what that was like, and a little bit more about why you wanted to enter the engineering industry.
This is a very good question. So I am the only Australian-born sibling in my family, and I think what shaped a lot of my perspective on the world is that my siblings are actually 7 and 10 years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up in Perth, WA, Australia, and 1990, I think it was pretty, I'd say the word desolate, but I don't think there was much here. And my family took us the most furthest away from any Indian community to Rockingham. I don't know if you've been to Perth or WA, but Rockingham's kind of like not the most inspiring of places, but has the best beaches or some really good beaches.
Okay, yeah.
And so the school I went to wasn't highly academic. It was a faith-based school. So my parents chose to put us there for, setting us up in a new country, good value systems and things like that. And during that time is when I kind of started playing sports quite passionately. And growing up, continued playing, then played for under 15s. They called it Matildas, but it's not like the Matildas that we know.
Yeah.
I just had the under 15s team, got scouted, and then we played for the under 17s Premier League team. And both teams, I actually got asked to be captain, and I never actually understood why. I think it's only when I had to do my CV to apply for jobs that I had to really think about it. For me, I loved helping people, and I think that might be a lot to do with Indian culture. So with Indian culture, you're really encouraged to respect your elders.
Mm-hmm.
Probably to the extreme where you can't speak up, which is something I do disagree with. And so I think that really shaped and affected me in the engineering industry, because you kind of get paid to have an opinion and speak up about things. And it's male dominated, but in Indian culture, women aren't necessarily encouraged to speak up to males. So that was really stressful for me, and it caused a lot of internal conflict and additional stress, I think, on top of the fact that construction and engineering is pretty hardcore in and of itself. So I think in terms of all of these experiences really kind of shaped who I am. And that's why I love the Western culture a little bit, because you are kind of encouraged to have your own opinions and people don't really care if you speak up. So it's been a balance of, for me, taking the best of both worlds and meshing them together, so to speak.
Brilliant. No, I love that. I mean, I think especially when you're, as someone who lived away for 10 years, you do, hold on to a lot of those sort of cultural identities, in terms of, they shape who you are. And especially when, you're growing up in a very different place to your parents, you'll have a lot of different challenges along the way. And one of the great things about this show is that most of our listeners, 60% of our listeners, are in Australia. But those listeners in Australia will be from India, they'll be from, Asia, they'll be from different parts of the world where they'll have similar, challenges that they'll be facing as well. This is one of the reasons I really like to do this show, is to, I guess, help those in the industry hear from others, to get mentorship, guidance, learning from. So just on that then, so obviously you early childhood, growing up in Perth, the whole sporting side of things. What was the sort of trigger or flame for you that really enlightened to move into the engineering side of things?
Yeah. So my dad's actually a mechanical engineer,
Okay.
and so I think I might have been slightly nurtured into problem solving and engineering. So I'd get like questions as a kid, like, real scientific things. If two cans were in the sun, one was like unpainted silver aluminium, one was painted black, which one would heat up quicker? And I would be really young, like I'd say under 10 years old. And I'd love these questions. I'd love the sciencey problem solving questions. And I remember Dad used to have to bring work home a lot in those early days, especially being an immigrant or a migrant to Australia, and it being 1992. roughly around that time, which was a recession. So I think for him, being the sole provider for our family, did some pretty hardcore sacrifices for us. And so when he did bring work home, I would sit with him and I'd look at what he was doing. And I remember this one job that he was doing, and he would include me, and I would have been pretty young, again under 12, and I think he told me I helped him solve the problem, but I had no idea what I was doing. I think I just had a simple look at things. And then fast forward, there was a documentary called Mega Constructions on Channel 10 here. I would have been year 9, I think, at the time, or year 10. And I watched them build the Burj Al Arab in Dubai.
Yeah.
And I thought, holy moly, I want to do that. That's so cool, because I saw so many different disciplines working together, which is very much like soccer, where you've got different positions on the field trying to achieve a common goal. And I saw the logistics and the planning, and I loved party planning at the time. I know it's so basic, but I loved planning parties.
Yeah.
And little events. And so I thought, oh, this is like event coordination in a field that I like, that is scientific, and you get to build things for people. Like, you actually get to help people. And I knew that I couldn't deal with blood. I was like, I would never be good in the medical field.
Yeah.
So yeah, that they were kind of the key. If I reflect on it, they are the key things that triggered me into civil specifically. Although I kind of had to fight for it a bit, because my dad actually didn't want me to do civil engineering because he's mechanical. He was like, why don't you consider mechanical? But I physically couldn't comprehend how things could move. Like, my brain doesn't think dynamically. Things just need to be static within reason. Obviously, buildings move and such. Yeah, I just thought it was bigger picture. Oh, there was one other experience as well. I would have been pretty young, again, around maybe 9 to 13, around that age. And we were coming back from the airport, and it was dawn, super, super early in the morning. And I woke up from a slumber, and I looked outside, and there were these loaders and rollers building a road for this new overpass. And I thought that was so cool. I don't know why, but I said, I want to do that. So that was before the Mega Constructions documentary. I knew that was really fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And I remember my parents, I'm pretty sure it was my dad, that said, oh, you're going to have to do night shift. And I was like, I don't care. That was like, I remember just saying, I don't care. That looks like fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're the pivotal key core memories that I have.
That's awesome. You hit on something there, and it's something that I've always talked about in terms of construction infrastructure engineering. I loop it all into construction, but it does a really bad job of selling itself.
Yeah.
If we were to go on to Netflix and there were more programs about an entrepreneur starting a construction company, or more like inspiring documentaries about engineering, and I know there are, but they're not enough. You see the real estate industry do it really well with a lot of the sort of cheesy
home improvements. Yeah.
But there's lots of different I guess ways to engage, but I think a way to inspire young people now is get where they are. If it's TikTok, if it's Netflix, where they're spending their time. We need more of this, But that's a really interesting, I guess, a foundation of why you decided to move into engineering. And so you studied engineering. Did you specialize in any specific areas, or?
So the degree at Curtin is Bachelor of Engineering, majoring in civil and construction. So I'd say we had a pretty well-rounded degree. And I know that it made me a big picture thinker, and it did instill some lateral thinking, purely because I avoided all structural engineering units. I think we had a few mandatory ones, but man, that freaked me out. I just thought to myself, I don't think I want to be responsible for doing building structural calcs. Like, give me stuff on the road and utilities and things that can't fall down. And so yeah, that's kind of where things are at. We did a lot of project management units. I chose to do a diverse range of units, like hydrology, so stormwater management type units, geotechnical units, because I didn't really know what I wanted to specialize in. I just kind of loved knowledge. so to speak. I kind of wanted to diversify my understanding of different aspects of civils. I didn't feel comfortable to buckle down and niche into any one thing during uni.
And when you finished uni, then what was your first experience like working in industry? Obviously,
Yeah.
one of the things that they do here really well in Ireland and the UK is that they offer sandwich degrees. So they do
Tell me
two
about that.
years. So they'll do 2 years where you work, where you study, fully, and then for a year you have to go and work for an employer. So
Ooh.
you have to go and work, say, for example, main contractor consultancy, but you work full time. Okay, so then your
How do
final
they get
year,
paid? Sorry, is that a paid situation or is that usually for free?
it's basically you're paid, but you're not paid. I guess what you would get paid if you're a graduate. So it's pretty much minimum wage. It's all about collecting experience. So you do your 2 years, and then you do your year where you're basically on placement, and then you're working full time on placement. And then during that year, you'll have maybe certain assignments that you'll need to submit. That's based around what you're learning within on the job effectively. And then your final year will be usually part-time working, part-time study. So when you graduate, you graduate with 3 years, of tertiary education and a year and a half worth of experience. So
Wow.
you're far more valuable as a graduate once you have, under that program, and 99% of the time, the companies that have offered you that sort of placement, they typically will hire you directly, once you graduate as well. So it helps businesses, and then it helps the student, gain more experience. Because what I noticed, I done this in New Zealand when I arrived in New Zealand initially. There was, and I couldn't really understand it, but graduates were graduating and then find it so hard to get a
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
And I was like, just does not make sense at all. I actually created an event called Auckland's Got Talent. And what I done was I interviewed probably 150 graduates. And literally, some of them had a year's experience, some had no year's experience. Some of them were from India or Asia that had experience
Yeah.
in their own country, but no experience locally. And so what I did is I got them all into a room, right? And then I got probably 40 construction companies in a room. And I made every single student arrive with their CV. They got a photograph when they came in. Their photograph went on the wall. And they
Wow.
literally had to go up to these construction companies who were, might be a general manager, might be a project director, might be a commercial manager. And so they would literally go up and introduce themselves. So at the end of the night, what would happen is the construction company would come up and go, I interviewed, there's 100 people here. I like this one, this one, this one, this one. And then on the Monday, I think we placed 15 people,
Wow.
just from that one night. So my whole thing was there isn't a lack of talent. It's more that it's putting a face to the name, because quite often you'll get rejected just by, the sound of your name, or, the fact that you haven't got local experience. None of that really matters. It's just about connecting people.
Yeah.
So, but that
Yeah.
was one of the big things. Graduates, I find that if we can make them get experience during their career, or I know that during their degree, and I know that some of them do cadetships, but I think it could be a little bit more standardized across Australian universities.
Yeah, so my experience on that, thank you for sharing what it's like in the UK. I think we could actually probably learn something from that. I do have my opinions as to why I don't think that happens here, but I'll get into that in a minute. So we had to do like 480 hours, which is equivalent of maybe 3 months of an internship to graduate and do a little report as to our experience. And that would qualify us after a 4-year degree to graduate. And it didn't have to be 480 hours necessarily of work experience, but you could attend, say, Engineers Australia events or webinars or seminars and put that down as training hours or experience hours. So it wasn't actually in a workplace necessarily. It could be a diverse range of kind of like your CPD hours
Yeah.
and such. So I did mine FIFO. I
Okay.
was very green, so green. When I tell you, Mick, I was green. I was very green.
Yeah.
19 years old, flying up to the Pilbara in WA for a company called Deck Mill at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And they still exist. And we had a contract to build a camp accommodation. and I was doing 15 days away, 6 days back. And I knew nothing. Like, I didn't know what a wet mess was or a dry mess. Didn't know that you couldn't wear singlets to go eat food. So I had to wear, basic, like I had to wear my work clothes. And so then people knew my name and I felt really uncomfortable. And, you're in your little donga by yourself and you're like, what the heck is this? So in a way, that was good life experience, and good technical experience as well. I actually chose to go out with the supervisors more than the engineers. The engineers were slammed. I just remember them being so busy. And this one guy doing QA, QC was just an incredible person for taking breaks and having a cigarette. And I just thought to myself, is that really like how stressful engineering is? Like, what am I getting myself into? So I didn't really, it's amazing how much you absorb and observe as a person entering into the industry and how you try to latch onto someone that you want to be like subconsciously. And I don't think seniors really realize this, but you're getting watched. You're getting watched in how you behave, how you perform, what your stress levels are like. And people are pretty switched on these days and like, I don't really want to be that stressed. I value XYZ more. Anyway, so after that was done, like I said, spent time with supervisors. I actually screeded concrete. I stripped cable with the electricians and I made sure like I really got hands on and understood things. And I remember being so nervous this one day. The engineer was pissed off with the concreting crew. And he's like, Rachel, take this measuring tape and go check the cover of this reinforcement for this footpath. And I was like, okay. And I remember my heart beating so fast because these guys have got missing teeth. They've got tats everywhere. And I've got undirty boots. I've got very fresh, crispy pants on. And I walked there and I'm just like, okay, how do I do this? What do I say? Like, how do I explain it? So I've walked up and down. I was like, this spot's out. And I know this spot's out. And I'm like, I need to say something now. And they're mid-pour, right? So they're pouring the concrete. And then, so I basically amended how I'd say it. And instead of saying, can you please change this? I said, can you please explain to me why you guys have cover? So I got the guy to tell me and feel good about his knowledge. And then I said, oh, well, what about this area? That looks like it doesn't really, meet that criteria. And he was like, oh, yeah, I guess you're right. And he kicked it over for me. I'm like, oh, thank God. Okay, I've done my job. But it was so convoluted how to get there. And so I'm watching the pour. And this was actually, can't remember the timing as such. It was quite a long time ago now. And he said, oh, you better watch where you're standing. You might get your pants dirty. I remember him saying that word for word with so much sass. And I had like looked at him and I don't know what came over me. And I said, if I was afraid to get my pants dirty, I wouldn't be here. I just snapped back at him and I was like, where the heck did that come from? He's like, all right, then we'll jump in and screed concrete. And I was like, okay, I will.
Yeah, good.
And so he walked me over, I got the boots on and I jumped in and I screeded the concrete for about literally 2 to 5 minutes. And I was like, guys, this is hard work. Really respect what you do, but I'm out of here. This is not for me. But then we had a pretty good working relationship after that for future work. So I think uni doesn't prepare you for that relational side of being a professional, which is why I really like the sandwich model you talked about, where you have to get a year's exposure of how to assimilate to a professional environment, whether that's office or on site, because they're life skills. What I've explained to our participants in with our clients, so we're a business to business, but we service their employees. I say, in order to be a professional, you've got your technical skills that you learn. And that could be through TAFE, through a university degree or a qualification, but you still need to deliver that well. And that's your operational side of being a professional. So that might be following company systems and processes, procurement policies, checklists, and that's how you deliver on your technical. But then you've also got to have a relational understanding and respect. And that's not only for yourself, but for how you work with other people. Because I think so much of when I reflect on my own experiences, my relationship with myself as a young 19 to 25-year-old, you're still learning so much about yourself. And then you're trying to then function in a professional environment. Facing conflict is difficult, speaking up for what you need. I spoke about already the ethnicity aspect and being Indian and trying to navigate that tension. Yeah, I think the 480 hours was okay, but probably not enough.
Mm. So following on from some great insights there, Rachel, I think is really really important, and I think in terms of the 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 amount of on-site experience that you can get, I think the better, and that comes whoever, for example, a lot of the work that we do, a lot of our listeners might be estimators, quantity surveyors, who might be office based, and we're always they're always the hiring managers that we're dealing with are saying we love an estimator who's maybe worked as a project engineer, who has been on site, who understands the sequencing, the methodology, has built relationships with subcontractors. That's the ones who are most
Yeah,
valuable to us. So I think that's really important. But obviously, sort of looking throughout your career, you've worked for some amazing businesses,
yeah.
Arup and Masenko and BHP. But moving throughout your career, then what has made you decide to start moving from an engineer into an entrepreneur? What was the catalyst for that?
Yeah. Do you know what? This is a long story, so I'll do my best to not get lost in my tangents that I usually go in. So, like I said, I did the 480 hours, graduated, and then in 2014 there was a massive downturn in the industry here. And to be fair, I was a bit of a diversity goldmine, female, ethnic engineer. Couldn't get a job, and that's okay. But I realized our final year was pretty hardcore. I think we had like 7 exams and 14 assignments within a 3 week period, 3 to 4 week period, which definitely prepared me for the intensity of industry. But it meant that I couldn't do my CV well. It was poorly put together. So I chose to take a gap extended period of time off in 2014 and just slow down, calm the nervous system down a bit. And I really worked on my CV. And like I said, I did engineering outreach to keep things going, keep me, I guess, occupied and do things that I like. And in that, we created activities for year 9 to year 12 students to get them inspired to do engineering. So explain to them oil and gas concepts by, getting a box of sand and putting containers filled with coloured water, and they had to get straws and try to find, the reservoirs and certain things like that, just illustrating engineering concepts to inspire. And then I just hardcore applied for jobs. One of the jobs that I applied for was with Woodside, and that was in my final year, and that was 4 rounds of interviews. And I remember not getting through. So I got through to, I think it was the third stage or final stage. And we had to have this really, really, really intense speed dating interview process. And you kind of just trying to tell them what you think that they need to hear. I didn't really know who I was enough or know my goals. I thought like, oh yeah, like I want to be a technical person. And so I was getting rejected for placement in 2014 from operations companies and design companies. So operations was telling me you'd be better suited for a technical role. Design companies were saying, no, we think you'd be better suited for something else. So I felt like I didn't have a place at all. So I've done this 4 year degree and I couldn't find where I could fit in. And so that was really unsettling. I remember just feeling really despondent, like, oh, like, am I smart enough? Like, did I just spend 4 years doing the wrong degree? And it really like affected my self-esteem. So I actually thought that I wasn't very smart for the longest time. And so that's part one as to why the business exists. Part two would be I finally landed an interview for a casual position for an alliance to update the major road network near the airport in Perth. And they called it the Gateway Project. So this was with Leighton Contractors, now CPB.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought Gateway was this local shopping centre that I drive down on the freeway. So he's talking like, oh, yeah, the Gateway thing. And I'm like, oh, yeah, like I live down in Baldivis, Rockingham. I could just drive up. And he's like, no. This is the $1 billion project for main roads. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Typing madly on this phone call. And I'm like, okay. And so I actually got that job. And during that time, all of that investment that I made updating my CV and applying for other places came to fruition. I was getting a couple of interviews. And so I sat an interview for Arup and I was contemplating, okay, you're in construction now, you're doing 10-hour days. I really wish they told me this stuff at uni, like what your lifestyle might be like. What is construction? Okay, you're up at 6, well, before 6, you're at work for 6:30, pre-starts at 6:45. I was still playing competitive sports as well. So, yeah, it was quite demanding, quite stressful. I got thrown in the deep end a lot, but I also welcomed it. I think in hindsight, I was such a yes girl. I just said, yeah, no worries. Like, I'll do that. That's so much fun. I can do it. And then I put myself in all these stressful situations. And then Arup declined my application the year before, but they accepted it for 2015. So I actually ended up leaving construction because I thought, okay, it'll be easier to go from construction to design than have sorry, what am I saying? Yeah. It'll be easier to start off in design and transition back to construction rather than have a 5 to 10 year construction, then try and learn design skills. So I actually did my graduate program with Arup, and believe it or not, that was kind of pillar number 2 or the second puzzle piece, because for such a reputable company, and no disrespect, graduate programs in general from all companies aren't made by engineers. They're usually a marketing tool to encourage the best talent from universities and TAFE to come join them.
Yeah.
You've got companies like BHP who have an epic marketed graduate program, the Big Four. They cream up the top scoring talent, and then these people go into management roles, non-technical roles. So then you have a skills deficit for the small to medium-sized enterprises who don't have the funding for a major graduate program or going out to universities or marketing campaigns to get talent. And I kind of observed that there. So that was like, another bit of experience. And for me, I realized graduate programs are great, but your stress actually comes from when you deliver the work. Like, it's from not knowing how to do your job and getting told, why did you put this many hours on your timesheet, or you're delayed on your project? Like, answer for it. And you can go on external training, you can go on workshops, you can go on technical workshops, but that's 3 months down the track from an external facilitator. You need help then and now. Otherwise, you're going home stressed and dreaming about solutions in your mind, which nobody wants to do. You just need someone to phone a friend. So that was the Arup experience. Pivotal moment at Arup, though. We had a new HR lady come in. Her name's Millie. And I think she created an amazing opportunity where they had a problem where people coming in for their internships but not reapplying for the graduate program. So think of it, a company's invested in this money to pay these interns and then they're not coming on, right? So that what's going on here? And I observed it, and I took my Curtin University engineering outreach experience. I was like, they're just not having fun. Like, what are they doing? They're not inspired by the work that they're doing. They come to work. The seniors didn't even know that they were rocking up or haven't planned ahead. And this is not just at these companies I've worked for. My research tells me this is a pretty industry-wide conundrum. And if they are planned, they'll get piecemeal kinds of work because you're only there for 3 months. So what are you going to do? Like administration, file cleaning up, like folder restructuring, maybe create a template for this. And you have a look at the billable hours and you're like, they're mostly on overheads. They're not doing anything meaningful, especially in consultancy. So she came to me and said, hey, do you have capacity? And I was like, yeah, I actually do. Yay for consultancy. And I was like, yeah, I'll help you out. And she said, I want to create, a fun internship program. So I pulled together a business case, created a cost code, and simulated a 50% tender design. And I got my civil team leader to act as a client. So we literally simulated a whole project for the 12-week period, including breaks. I scheduled a legal component, a proposals component, a commercial component, everything that it takes to build up an engineering deliverable to 50% design. And because we, at the time, had so many different departments, I made sure each department had a say. So the project creation, I planned it so that you needed to have a bit of geotech. You needed to have a bit of, HVAC or like buildings and things like that. And the way that they did the hiring was the 6 interns were from one of each department. And also building in the uniqueness of Arup. I mean, they're a global company and they leverage off their knowledge from all around the world. So I actually got my graduate in my grad intake to put in a facades component for the building that they had to design. So they had to reach out to her. She put in a fake price and then they had to build it in for the bid.
Mm-hmm.
And at the very, very end, because there was a BIM area, I got them to put their design in Google SketchUp and have the VR and everyone could walk through it. And they literally had to present it to the whole office. And I remember them saying, yeah, we forgot to put in profit, so we've done this pro bono. And they'll never forget that, right? And I'll never forget that. So they got good experience. And I'm pretty sure they had a 100% reapplication rate for their graduate program. Not saying it was just my part. I mean, Millie did an amazing job with the overall structure, introducing them to company culture. But for the technical engineering component, I thought that was really, really important. And I was like, oh, well, I don't think any other companies get this. I would love to be able to do this and implement, similar initiatives in line with different company cultures and goals. So, yeah, it's a really long-winded way of explaining that this business model helps those small to medium-sized companies or teams who don't have big marketing budgets. It helps those companies that want to do maybe sandwich models but don't have senior resources available to train, because it is such a time investment, because you're like, oh, I have to, it's just easier that I do it myself. There's no long-term thinking. And when I was finally in a construction project, so I left Arup because I couldn't handle sitting behind a desk. I got really good at stormwater drainage design, but it wasn't me. I felt like claustrophobic, like I wanted to get back out on site. So I moved to a tier 2 contractor, or 3 at the time, I can't remember, purely because I thought it would be easier than working at CPB. I didn't want to do a major project. Just give me the local government work. Anyway, this is probably the pivotal story. If anyone's going to take anything away from it, this was the apex of where the business model started. They replaced a 25-year experienced mechanical engineer because he didn't want to travel to this project. He would have been traveling 3 hours a day, a return trip, plus some with traffic. They replaced him with me, a four-year experienced civil engineer. And it was a 3-person team for like an $8 million odd job. And I'd come from design. And the work that I did as a graduate for 8 months did not prepare me. All I did was I said, okay, well, I've got a mortgage now. So anyone who is in their early 20s and trying to make a commercial decision about a pay bracket, please consider this story. All I said was I want $1 more an hour and I know I'll be working a 10-hour day, and I asked for a pay bracket. I did not know what role and responsibility that would equate to or title. All I knew was that I needed commercially that much money to make things comfortable. And I got put on this crazy job. It was meant to be a very simple dig, lay the pipe, weld the pipe, lay the pipe, and backfill. And it just exploded into 2 work fronts becoming 5 work fronts. We had a micro tunneling package. We had reinstatements happening, and it just got mental. And I actually was dealing with a bit of sexual harassment on site as well. It's like you come to work and engineering is already hardcore, and then you've got to deal with these sly comments, which uni does not prepare you for, nor should it have to. So I was just stunned. Like, I just did not know what to do. I didn't know how to speak up for my boundaries. Also, Indian culture. I didn't know how to say, bruh, like, stop that. That's just unacceptable behavior for me. That might work for other people in your career that you've worked with, other women, but for me, this is not going to fly. I wish I knew how to say that back then, but a day wiser, I guess. And at the same time, I was listening to my dad contemplate retirement. So he's 71 now. Mind you, I had this idea when I was 26, so in 2019, and I was still really, really young. And I was on peak hour traffic, and I just thought, oh my gosh, like it was like a pin drop. Everything went opaque, and it was just this idea came down from heaven as such. And I was like, why aren't you connecting retired people who are struggling to transition out of industry with people who are struggling to transition into industry? Why are we not smashing and obliterating and pivoting away from this linear waterfall of knowledge coming down org charts to just bypassing all of that and just re-injecting it? Like, why is that not happening? And then all of those stories that I told you about, Curtin, Arup, delivering workshops, things that I love, things I'm interested in, just made sense. And for once, I was like, this is what I've got to do. And ever since then, I was gripped by it. But then immediately after, I thought it was a shit idea. Sorry for swearing. I thought it was a bad idea. I was like, oh, it's probably just me, right? I'm the one that's not very smart. I doubt other people would ever want this. It's probably just me that needs a lot of help. So I kind of didn't think much of it. I told my boyfriend, now husband at the time, now husband, the idea. And he was like, no, this is really good. And I was like, is it? Like, I thought it might just be me. And he said, no, like, you really need to look into this. And he's in surveying, land surveying.
Mm-hmm.
So he kind of understood, that aspect, and I pursued it. And then obviously from there, you've got to figure out, okay, is this commercially viable? Can I make it into a profitable business model? Crap, would retirees actually even want to do this? I've just got one point of contact, which is my dad, of which I would call up quite regularly for help. Like I said, I was filling in for a mechanical engineer. So I had mechanical questions because he's mechanical. I'm civil. I didn't do that. So I understood the importance of leveraging and having a network, but people don't always have the personality to build that network. So I've created it on a platter and I'm handing it to people,
So, I mean, if you're in an elevator pitch with someone and they're saying, what does your business do? How would you explain it to someone?
Yeah, I would say that we at Buteras provide independent, on-demand coaching services from engineering and construction subject matter experts.
Okay, cool. So, as an example, a lot of estimators, quantity surveyors listening to this show, how would they benefit from the services of Buteros? Or if it's a general manager listening to this that maybe looking at their team and going, we've got a young team here, needs a bit of help, how does it come about?
Yeah, right. So I'll take a step back and kind of give you a potential insight to what's going on in these junior people's minds. Okay, I've got this job to do. I know that I've been given 8 hours to do it, or there's a deadline coming up. My boss looks really busy, looks really stressed. I don't know if they're approachable, or they might just be really bad at coaching and training. Crap, I'm going to spin my wheels. I don't know I'm spinning my wheels, but I'm spinning my wheels trying to figure this out. So what this does is it gives them basically a technical employee assistance program. So you have that for psychology services. This one's a technical one. So you can call up, you get access to the list of people curated for that company. So if you're a quantity surveying company, for example, you'd still put engineers on there because you might need to leverage knowledge from the engineering expertise about a particular area. And I actually am looking at quantity surveyors at the moment. I've got a couple that I'm trying to get on board. So then you would look at their CVs, look at their career experience, look at their expertise, and book in a session with them. And that could be within the day or the next day. It could be over phone call, it could be over email, and you're getting instant feedback and guidance. And the commercial value proposition is really you're getting principal level knowledge for less than a senior's billable rate. Because a senior, mind you, another perspective to have is they're probably pushing boundaries as well and getting promoted really professionally young. They're probably stressed and they probably need the support as well. Because they're retired, it's for anyone in your company to access. You can do group coaching sessions because we're not doing the traditional one-to-one mentoring. It's one-to-many. I or your employees could say, oh, I need a session with this project manager, a session with this quantity surveying estimator professional, and this expert in bridge construction.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so where have you seen, I guess most success, in terms of this benefiting the industry? Has this been with larger organizations, smaller organizations? Like where have you seen the demand typically, Rachel?
Small to medium-sized businesses and operations. Bigger companies actually don't think they need it. Maybe because the executive decision makers don't see the problem. But like I said, I've worked for pretty big companies and the problem exists in the small companies and the big companies. It's just that I think people can get a bit jaded with the fact that they've got these amazing graduate programs. But at the end of the day, where we're hitting in our niche is where you're delivering the work. It's like on the job tutoring kind of thing. You've got high school tutors, you've got uni tutors, now we've got industry tutors. The benefits that we've seen is that there's an immediate return on training investment because you don't have to have time off work to go get external training to deliver on your immediate job demands. You're getting instant support and it's getting applied directly to the deliverable. So it actually is to the company's benefit to have something like this. And so you're getting 100% or near 100% return on your training investment. You're limiting project delays, reducing liabilities, because as you know, in the construction industry, people could actually get really injured or die if someone doesn't know what they're doing. So having that, kind of advisory eldership, so to speak, is good in that way. And I know here in Australia, in the construction industry, I think, 90% of people, I think it's from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, go on compulsory workplace training to increase their skills. But a very small percentage of that always find it useful. So you kind of got to work out a way of like, okay, where are we spending our training budgets? And is it really converting to where it matters the most in delivering good quality, timely, competent work?
It's like having on-demand access to a coach, isn't it? Like I've literally spent 2 years trying to find a recruitment coach, and now I've got one who I spend 3 hours with every 2 weeks. And to be honest, it's so valuable. Gives you clarity. You're working through someone who's been through the similar problems before. As you said, it's directly impacting the business. So what I take from that, I execute. And it helps grow the company. I can see that being of massive help. As an example would be this. So say if it was a tier 3 contractor in the civil space, maybe they're having problems with the amount of volume tendering that they're doing at the moment, or something like that. They may need their team needs more support. They may, maybe the estimating manager recently is taken sick or something like that. So they need some support. Is it you're engaging with the owner of that business? The owner is then saying, okay, this is something that we're interested in. And then is your individual that you're maybe using in this space, are they like on tap in terms of, are they doing phone calls? Are they coming into the office? So how is it actually happening?
Delivery side?
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, good question. So delivery is super innovative. Because they are retired, they are time available during work hours. And so you can organize for them to come into your office. We use a booking system. So you get a dedicated, unique link for that company. We select which coaches are compatible to your upcoming projects and work portfolio. And it's actually anonymous unless obviously our coaches come into your office, then everyone sees that there's coaching happening. So then people, especially with ethnicity, saving face is something as well. They will just book in a session. It can be delivered online. And then after that's facilitated, the coaching session scope can either be, I need to learn some technical skills here. I need to learn how to make this more efficient, or, improve a process for a company even. Or it could be a relational thing. I'm having this conflict on site. I'm trying to get the contractor to do X, Y, Z, but they're not listening to me. Do you have any tips and tricks about how I can improve my communication style? So like I said, those 3 pillars, technical, operational, relational, that's where our coaches assist. And so, like if you have a tier 3 contractor really stressed for time, they can help with time management skills. How do you simplify the work down? How do you prioritize the work? What's going to have the highest impact? Because when you're early in your career, everything is equally as important, because you can't distinguish what's important from what's not important. Everything's new. Everything has high consequence. I remember one guy, I think they saw me struggling on that construction project, and he'd come out on site and he mentored me. And there's a very, very distinct difference between mentoring and coaching. Mentoring is super big picture. They're usually not in your field, and they can't help you with interpreting a specification. They can't help you with building a scope of works, or understanding what a good RFQ looks like, or how to do a good estimation, or even reviewing your estimate and picking out your blind spots. That's not mentoring. That's what I've described there as coaching, is what we're focusing on. And he came out on site and he said, Rach, like, what's the worst thing that can happen? I was like, everything. Everything. The worst thing is everything. That tailings dam could leak and fail and kill someone. That pit could fall and kill someone. Everything was a threat. Like, I didn't have anyone to guide me to say, hey, I hear what you're feeling and what you're thinking, but let's go through this logically and let's explore that. Okay, what measures can you put in place? How about you go look at the project management plan? What does that say? And just give me, like, a pathway to solve my concerns rather than generic advice of, what is the worst thing that can happen in these buzzwords? Like, that doesn't help. It just doesn't.
No, 100%. But I mean, that's the worst attitude to have in construction. So what's the vision of the company, Rachel? Like, where do you see things sort of
Yeah.
developing then?
I don't see it staying in engineering construction. So my big, hairy, audacious goal is to strengthen the world's next professional generation in competency, technical competency as well. Sorry, competency, confidence, and proficiency. And that means once I get the model pretty well sorted for the engineering construction industry, which is where I'm experienced in. I've heard that accountants want this. I've heard that lawyers would love to have this, teachers even. And I felt quantity surveying in the engineering construction industry. So it just needs to expand. Like, I'm really driven by impact, because this is going to really help a lot of people's stress levels. It's going to improve the image of the industry. Maybe more women will get into it because you're better supported. I think there's 1% of women in construction. Like, no shit. Like, it is so stressful. Your hormone system, your cortisol levels are up. You've got to factor in, if you want to have kids, like what that's doing to your body.
Yeah.
There's just so much more to consider. So, yeah.
I mean, love it. I mean, I think it's a great idea, to be honest. I mean, retaining
Thank you.
knowledge and expertise in the industry through coaching, support,
Yeah.
development,
Yeah.
is brilliant. And I mean, amount of guys that I know that retire and end up coming back into the workforce because they haven't got hobbies, or
Yes.
they're retiring and they're wondering, what am I going to do next? Something like this where they're maybe contributing keeps him interested. As I mentioned yesterday, I was speaking to a guy. He's 67, and
Yeah.
last year I placed a 73-year-old in a director role. So I mean, the
Congrats.
demand is still 100% there for this really high quality
Yeah.
talent that realistically is so hard to replace.
Question for you, do you find that there's a bit of a stigma in hiring people of the older generation demographic, like the baby boomer generation?
It depends on the role, Rachel. So for example, if it was it's interesting. I remember I used to do a lot of work in more general construction. I placed a site manager once, and he was 73. To be honest, I think it depends on the demand at the time. There sometimes can be a little bit of pushback. They sometimes will think that older candidates are a little bit less tolerant, that are a bit you can be stuck in their ways a little bit. They know how they do things in the way that they like them to be done, but mightn't be able to adapt, to a different methodology. Sometimes there can be a little bit of pushback on that.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is older people I honestly think that nowadays, 60 is like 50.
For sure.
It's
Yeah.
not, it's nothing. One other thing as well is that you do get a lot of people migrating to Australia. So you'll find that maybe someone migrates to Australia when they're 40, right? 45, something like that. Maybe it takes them 5 years to get citizenship, and then all of a sudden they're buying a house at 50. Now they're getting, now they're in that stressful situation where it's harder to get mortgages. They have to work longer. So
Yes.
people
Yeah.
typically have to work longer nowadays. One of the guys I was speaking to yesterday was like, I'm money motivated. That's keeping me. I want to
Yeah.
create some wealth for my children and stuff like that. So
Yes.
doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily want to retire. It's not an all. I don't think you can put a blanket statement on it anymore. I think maybe 10, 15 years ago, if I was sending forward a candidate that was in mid 60s, late 60s, I would probably get a bit of pushback. But I think the talent gap is just getting so,
So,
yeah, it's getting so big that if someone's good and they're no matter what age they are, I think there's a home for them.
yeah.
So it's pretty
Um,
complex.
I wanted to mention, especially with this delivery, to make it commercially viable, it's not that you're paying for the resource to sit in your office with this business model that we've got here at Buteras. It's actually you just pay for a package of hours and we draw down on it. So you can budget it. So what I meant by spending behavior is right now training budgets, sorry to distract from what you're saying, kind of connected, is that it's like you might have a $1,500 annual budget for training and you'll just be like, oh, my professional development review's coming up. What's coming up from this industry body? All right, we'll go do it. And then, yeah, tick, I've done it. This is like having a line item as a resource, call it Buteros, and you're getting a multitude of minds to access. Because hiring those expertise would cost you way more. Not having those expertise is costing you money. And I think one of the issues is that I'm eliminating the cost of that. And I think it overwhelms people being like, crap, now we're quantifying the training needs. We've got so many testimonials from participants. We're sitting at over, I think 92% of our sessions that have been given feedback have met the mark and they want to book in another session. The one that it didn't meet the session, there was a communication issue about our scope of services and the battery limits between what we do and them, and that was a one-off. So, like, there's a huge supply and demand. Like you said, you got people who are getting bored and going back in, but maybe they've got physical conditions where they can't do the same demanding work, but they've got all the knowledge in their mind. Their mind's fine, their body's just unable. They can jump on this, or they don't want to set up their own ABN or business number or trading. They just come on as a casual and they can share their knowledge. That gap that you're talking about, and if people hire more experienced people, they're doing it because they're proficient, right? They've got the technical skills, they've got the lateral thinking, they've got the wisdom, they can get the job done quick. And it is a short-term fix, but that knowledge needs to be retained and it needs to be reinvested, because for the industry, we can't just rely on these really experienced people doing the work until they got, because then where's that going to go? Like, there needs to be a mechanism, and it needs to be done now. It can't be like, we're in this, what are we going to do? We have to start investing now, like, and being a bit forward thinking and not knee jerking with these issues.
Do you think with the emergence of AI that there's potentially any, difficulties there? Because I'm sort of imagining if you were recording every single conversation with a note taker on AI, and you've done this for the next 2 years, and then you're building the intelligence into AI where this could effectively, you could get the answer pretty quickly. Is that potentially an issue?
So when I was pulling together the business and the whole AI thing came up, I had to take a step back. I had to really is this going to be a make or break thing? And my research and conclusion was this: people are humans and they desire connection. AI right now doesn't give you industry or job specific solutions, and it doesn't ask you or prompt you questions to think bigger or think critically. Right now, with it being a language model, you need to ask it a question. So you need to know what questions to ask. But if you're inexperienced, you actually don't know what questions to even ask. You kind of need someone who's more experienced to guide you to asking the right questions. Like I said, the relational aspect of being a professional, Buteras creates a simulated environment, really, where they're practicing how to converse, practicing how to define their problem, practicing how to brainstorm and problem solve, how to respect intergenerational differences, how to resolve conflict, all in an offline setting, which they don't even know that they're building these soft skills, but it's going to get translated straight in. Whereas AI would be good. So what I do is I encourage participants, look, AI sits in your operational proficiency category, and maybe it will give you some technical facts, but you as a professional are still liable for choosing the right response and taking ownership of that. You can't blame AI for giving you a result in the courts and say, oh, but AI told me. Like, it's just not going to work. You need to have that engineering judgment. You need to have that eldership guiding you to build that confidence to back up your decision making.
So if there's someone listening to this, Rachel, that wants to reach out, maybe it's someone coming towards retirement, maybe it's someone who, wants to maybe utilize your services. What's the best way to get in contact with you?
Yeah, so through our website there is a connect page, but honestly, I'll just give you my email address and we can probably put it in the description if they want to. And there's also through the website a discovery call bookings through Microsoft Bookings, and you can just choose a time that suits you wherever you are in the world, and we can have a chat. So there's a couple of ways: direct email or the bookings if you want to have
Your
a
email,
chat.
your website address?
www.buteros.com, spelt like this without the dash on the top,
Perfect.
just buteros.com. Yeah, I wanted to make the business international when I built it up, so I didn't do .com.au. I knew from the start that it needed to help a lot of people.
Love it. Well, I think it's an amazing idea. I think it's something that the industry can benefit from in a massive, massive way. You know, hats off to you for, you know, leaving a steady career in engineering, you know, to try something different. That's the
Freaking out, mate. Mick. I'm like, sometimes I'm thinking, what the heck am I doing? So really appreciate your encouragement, and all of that adds to my fuel to keep me going on the down days where you're kind of thinking like, oh, like why can't people just see its value yet? You know?
oh, keep going. That's all I can say. But no, it's been fantastic to have you on the show, Rachel. And I appreciate all your thoughts and wisdom. Yeah, looking forward to keeping in contact.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me.
Before you go today, guys, I'm just going to ask you to do one thing. Can you please go to Apple right now or Spotify right now and just give us those 5 stars? Hit that 5-star button. It makes such a difference you wouldn't believe. The whole idea of this show is to inspire, educate, and motivate our listeners. And we only do that if we're getting the best guests. The best guests want to see data. They want to see information. They want to see how many listeners that we get. And so all of this stuff is really, really important. So if you can just literally go and do that today, if you enjoy the show, just go and hit that 5-star button. It makes such a difference. I hope you've enjoyed the show. We're going to continue to push this out there every Monday. So if you can, hit that 5-star button. And if you can't, even share it with a friend. Go on to WhatsApp, flick it on to your crew. Guys, thank you so much for listening. On to next week.